The term epic is defined as being a long poem, typically one derived from an ancient oral tradition narrating the deeds and adventures of heroic or legendary figures or the past history of a nation. It could also be defined as an exceptionally long and onerous task or refer to something heroic or grand in scale or character. When something is epic, there's a bit of weight and a bit of scope behind the word. It's a big word to toss around, and unfortunately in the modern era, the word epic has been tossed around so many times, and without any semblance of proper context, that the word has all but lost any and all meaning. There are very few things in the world today that can be truly considered epic. Oceans are epic. Great heroic tales of long voyages are epic. The universe is epic. Pulling off a 1000 hit combo in the latest Street Fighter IV upgrade is not epic. A so-called legendary battle comprising 10 former Power Rangers backed by about 100 or so Japanese stuntmen is not epic. And oh yeah, that top 20 epic nerd moments video, none of those moments are epic. Mind you, I concede that there's a couple of moments in that video that could be considered what one would call epic failures, but even then, none of them are epic. Very few things could be considered epic in the purest sense of the word. But in rare cases, you'll come across something that comes pretty damn close, or at the very least does an exceptionally good job of faking it. Take for example, Gauntlet IV for the Sega Genesis. Now despite the 4 in the title, this is really nothing more than a near arcade-perfect conversion of the original Gauntlet arcade game from 1985. Choose from one of 4 characters and survive the gauntlet, if you will, of monsters, traps, and other obstacles on a quest to attain that magical high score. If you have a multi-tap device for your Genesis, you can have 3 other players join you on this amazing adventure, or something to that extent. And gameplay in Gauntlet is pretty damn simple. You move your hero with the directional pad, shoot with the B button, and use any acquired magic potions with the C button. You can insert a coin for additional health by holding down the A button and pressing start. Your main objective is to navigate the labyrinths, finding keys to unlock doors, food to restore your ever-dwindling health, slaying monsters by either shooting them from a distance or fight them head-on, and avoiding whatever traps that lay before you, all for the sake of making your way to the exit situated somewhere in the maze of chaos. For the most part, Gauntlet IV remains true to the arcade original it's based upon, not only in terms of the gameplay and the level maps and whatnots, but also in the overall presentation. All the sounds and voice bites are nicely adapted over to the Genesis platform without much in terms of quality loss. Sure, there's a bit of roughness in the voice bites, but that's about it. The game itself looks almost spot on when compared to the arcade game, save for the obvious fewer colors on the Genesis side, but still it looks fairly close to perfect. Everything moves about at the same speed, very few if any instances of really noticeable slowdown to be found, and there's some occasions where you'll have some characters sort of disappear partially, but other than that, if it wasn't for the Gauntlet IV label, you probably wouldn't have guessed this was a Genesis port. I mean, it's probably an exaggeration at best, but really, it looks and runs really nice and plays just as well as 2. In addition to the arcade mode, there's a battle mode played with multiplayer, a record mode where you play through the arcade levels and attempt to get a high score, I guess. And then there's the quest mode where you play a more fleshed out version of Gauntlet, where you have to explore 4 different towers and acquire crystals to unlock the entrance to the castle or something. The quest mode is something akin to a precursor to the later Gauntlet Legends, I think, where you also have like 4 different worlds you could travel around and stuff. This is basically Gauntlet with a new set of levels and some RPG elements. You can earn experience points to upgrade your various statistics, and use gold to acquire different weapons and armor. There's some boss fights to be found here, that sort of thing. It's not a bad addition for those who want a little more out of their Genesis titles, but nothing I personally care for. Probably because the password system that this thing uses is ridiculous. Even teenage me would gawk at this sort of password system. I guess it's back to K-Gen for this mode. Despite the near-perfect arcade conversion and the additional play modes, the strongest aspect of Gauntlet IV lies not in gameplay, not in graphics, additional play modes, or arcade soundbites, but rather the custom-made soundtrack specifically created for this release. Probably made for the game's quest mode, but the soundtrack also plays during the arcade mode, the battle mode, and the record mode, almost to an overpowering degree where the sound effects are practically drowned out as a result. You recall what I said about the word epic being tossed around all over the place to the point where it's basically lost all meaning, and there were very few instances where the word was truly appropriate? This is not one of those moments, but it does come pretty close. Gauntlet 4's soundtrack is probably one of the few video game chiptunes that come close to befitting a true epic. Compositions that are truly possessing the scope and grandeur that great tales of heroics often demand. The tunes evoke feelings of adventure, majesty, and inspiration that really sticks with you for a good long time. And even though the catalog of music is somewhat small, it never feels tiring and drawn out. If anything, the soundtrack alone has gotten me more inspired to play more Gauntlet than ever before. But even with a powerful and majestically composed soundtrack, one cannot look past the fact that Gauntlet 4 is really nothing more than a near-perfect conversion of a 1985 arcade game, with a couple of modes added to flesh out the overall package. There is the criticism that the general gameplay of Gauntlet is repetitive, monotonous, and dull. You shoot at some monsters a few times before you just say fuck it and plow through them instead. And you know what? That's probably true. But there's also a sense of gratification when it comes to plowing through swarms of monsters without much effort, and Gauntlet is one of those games where you can either strive to do the very best you can to get that high score and progress as far into the game as you can, or you just throw caution to the wind and ram through anything that moves, plopping in available credits to prolong your adventure a tad more. Overall though, Gauntlet 4 is probably the best version of Gauntlet I've ever played. Perhaps even better than the arcade original or the various emulated versions that have permeated the industry over the years. Gameplay is simple and challenging, yet satisfying as all hell. Control is top notch, graphics and sound effects are practically on par with arcade quality, and of course you have that incredible soundtrack that truly sells the overall package. If you're a fan of old school Gauntlet and have a Genesis lying around, consider giving Gauntlet 4 a shot. It's a slick piece of work, very well done,